We got dominoes that got to fall in the NFL. What domino for you, Breach, is the next domino to fall to really move this offseason in the next level? Because Kirk Cousins was the first free agency domino. What's the next offseason domino?
You know what? I came up with two because I know Sully came up with one. I didn't want to. One of them would have indirectly been involved with his. So I'll say that Haason Reddick gets traded. It's pretty clear he does not want to be in Philadelphia. It seems like the Eagles are open to dealing him. And that's the kind of guy where, hey, if you can get that kind of pass rush at this point in the offseason, free agency for the most part is done. You're not going to find a solid talent like that in free agency. So if you want to upgrade on defense, you want to bring in a guy who had 11 sacks last season, 16 sacks the year before that, you're going to have to do it in a trade. So I think he gets dealt, and I'll say he goes to the Houston Texans. I feel like they have been beefing up their defense. We already saw them add Danielle Hunter. You add Haason Reddick there, and that defense just becomes insanely good. I mean, DeMeco Ryans will be building the next Bill Belichick level defense over there in Houston. So I will say that Haason Reddick gets traded sometime before the draft.
It kind of feels like that's where that's going, right? I mean, they bring back Josh Sweat. It just doesn't feel like there's going to be a home there for him in Philadelphia. And the fact that this hasn't had a resolution, I feel like this could come towards the NFL draft where if a team doesn't find that piece on day one or day two, maybe they throw some draft capital for 2025 to get Sweat in there. To get Haason Reddick in there as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And they also went out and signed Bryce Huff to a big contract. It's like they have, I was thinking about this and I can't remember I don't remember why I was thinking about this, but it's just like I must feel like it was like had a weird like sort of aside and it just like while I was sleeping and like dreaming, like nothing, wasn't dreaming about anything, just sort of thinking about like the NFL. I think it's like fascinating that Fletcher Cox retires, Jason Kelce retires. You have these two and it's really a testament to Howie Roseman and this Eagles franchise that those things happen. And you have Cam Jurgens who slides in at center. We'll see if he's good enough to replace Jason Kelce. But then you also have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter who just immediately are starters at this position. Like you have two. I mean, Fletcher Cox is a Ring of Honor guy. Did we talk about this on the podcast? I think I talked about this maybe.
Yeah, we
talked about this on Thursday. So it wasn't a dream. We just talked about it in the last show. That's all it was.
Probably.
Yeah. Again, it's a Bob Lane NC State brain. But yeah, like it's just a testament to the Eagles. And I think when you do go out and sign Bryce Huff and you bring back Brandon Graham and Josh, you just like all the way that Josh Sweat is in the fold and you have Nakobe Dean, you just have all these younger guys that you're bringing along. It does make sense that Haason Reddick could be on the way out. So I think that fits. And then the Breach, look, the second one, quite frankly, just for timing purposes, I'll tell you, this would have been mine as well. Sully, what your pick for offseason domino is. I think it is the most important domino in the offseason. I know it sort of mandated, we saw Ryan Wilson did it on Monday. I saw Daniel Jeremiah did it on Tuesday. Of course, I'm mad because I'm filing my mock draft on Tuesday and it's already been done by two other, more prominent draft guys on the national scale, but some kind of draft trade, most likely by a particular team, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings trade into the top 5, as you noted. They've already kind of tipped their hand a little bit by acquiring the number 23 overall pick in a trade with the Houston Texans. They're clearly gearing up to package that pick and the number 11 overall pick and whatever else they need to throw in there to get into the top 5 to get themselves a quarterback. I think it's going to be fascinating to see where in the top 5 they eventually go. Could it be as high as number 2 or number 3? With Washington or New England, or more likely is it Arizona at number 4 or Los Angeles, the Chargers at number 5? All of those are just fascinating for how the domino, no pun intended, of how the rest of the NFL draft is going to go. Because if they get to number 4 or number 5, that has J.J. McCartney written all over it. If it's 2 or 3, then we start to have those conversations. How do they feel about Drake May? How do they feel about Jaden Daniels? Do they love J.J. McCarthy so much that he's going to crash into the top 3? I think all of that is fascinating, but specifically the Minnesota Vikings, I think are going to make some moves here before we get to the draft.
I think the McCarthy thing, you could also add this into sort of that fold as well. It's like, how high can J.J. McCarthy boost his stock? Adam Schefter was on NFL Live last week, and was talking about it and said that he had a dinner bet with his buddies who he went to college with at Michigan. He's a big Michigan guy. In case anybody didn't know that, he should. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But then J.J. McCarthy would be a early first-round pick. And maybe even been like top 10. I don't think he said top 5. But like then I heard, and Mike Greenberg's not like an information guy per se, but he does know a lot of people around the, knows a lot of football people, and you hear him say stuff that can be. He put it out on Get Up today that he thinks he like just referenced it like several times about J.J. McCarthy going 3rd overall, which is really interesting. And Washington's come out and said that they're willing to trade the deal. Like I think there's a case to be made that McCarthy, given his age, his upside, like we saw Andrew Luck at Stanford under Jim Harbaugh. He wasn't asked to be a huge volume guy. Like it's a really interesting proposition, Breach, I think, to say like, okay, how high can JJ McCarthy boost his stock? And then that begs the question, like, where do the Vikings have to trade to get a quarterback in this draft class?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, obviously. And look, here's my thing with what the Vikings might try and do, or with what another team, maybe the Raiders, we know they're looking at quarterback. We saw Sean Payton say on Monday at the owners meeting that the Broncos could realistically look at trading up and possibly targeting a quarterback. So there are definitely teams that need quarterbacks. I feel like the Giants are kind of the wild card there because they're the closest to the top 5, would have to give up the fewest amount of draft picks to move up. So a lot of competition to move up. But if you're the Minnesota Vikings and you move up to 3, I just don't think you can give up the amount of compensation it takes to get to 3rd overall and be stuck taking the 3rd best guy at his position. So that to me makes no sense at all. We saw the 49ers do this when they drafted Trey Lance, move it up the 3rd overall, quarterback taking 1, quarterback taking 2. You get Trey. You can't take the 3rd best guy at his position with the 3rd pick when you can take the 1st best guy at any other position. So to me, just from the amount of compensation it would take to move up from 11 to 3, the move just doesn't make sense. Now, maybe if they can get to 5, but we also saw Jim Harbaugh say at the owners meeting, the 5th overall pick's like having the 1st overall pick for non-quarterbacks. So it's like he's trying to make that pick more valuable, and he's basically telegraphing the teams, if you want to come up and get this, it's going to cost you because now you get the best positional player. So yeah, the Vikings need a QB, but I just think it's a huge risk to go all the way up to 3.
I also love that he was talking up J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, Michigan ties there, but he's clearly juicing up his draft stock on purpose so that teams go up to either 3 or whatever to have that number 1, quote unquote, overall pick non-quarterback at number 5. I thought that was very savvy for him on multiple levels.
I asked him about Andrew Luck in his first combine appearance with the 49ers. And I thought he wasn't as hype as he was with JJ McCarthy. And I think that's definitely on purpose because there was no chance he was getting Andrew Luck. Like no one was getting to 1 because that's where Andrew Luck was going. But JJ McCarthy is in the number 5 wheelhouse. He can't trade Justin Herbert. Like you can't trade Justin Herbert and draft JJ McCarthy. I think that would, I looked at it, I was going to do it in my mock draft, and the money just doesn't work. So, it's just one of those where, you have Justin Herbert, you're pumped about that, and you want people to come up and get J.J. McCarthy, and you hopefully get a couple first-rounders out of it by trading out of that spot.